The first time my life broke open, it started with one sentence and one chipped ceramic mug. We agreed to let her stay, but if she keeps acting like this, I'm done. I was 10 years old. My feet did not reach the floor. My hands were wrapped around a paper napkin and a mug of hot chocolate in a crowded cafe. My mother thought I was distracted, drawing little boxes on the napkin and staring out the window. I was not. I heard every word. She did not say my name. She did not say my daughter. She said her, like I was not a person, like I was some problem adults were trying to manage before it got expensive. Across from her sat a man in a dark coat. He had a leather folder, a neat haircut, and the kind of calm face adults wear when they are discussing something serious but do not want children to notice. My mother slid a thick envelope across the table. He opened it, counted papers, nodded once, and said something about guardianship, access, and trust restrictions. Even at 10, I knew enough to understand this. When adults start using quiet voices and legal words, somebody is about to lose something. That afternoon, my mother told me we were going to stay with my grandparents for a little while. 3 days later, I was gone. To the outside world, I had simply disappeared for a time. There were whispers, questions from school, sad faces, my mother crying to relatives on the phone, people saying things like, "Poor Julia, after everything she's already been through." 9 years later, another envelope landed on her front porch. It was plain brown. My handwriting was on the front. What inside was a chipped mug, exactly like the one from that cafe. A photo from the day she decided I was a problem to be negotiated. A copy of my father's will, and a black flash drive that held every truth she had spent years burying under grief, money, and a carefully polished public image. When she opened that package, the whole house tipped into panic. If you want to know how a 10-year-old girl who was treated like a burden became the person who tore down her mother's perfect story piece by piece, then stay with me. My name is Lily, and the day my mother dropped me at my grandparents' house felt less like a visit and more like being returned. She packed my suitcase without asking what I wanted. No stuffed rabbit, no drawing book, no yellow sweater I loved. Just school clothes, socks, a toothbrush, 2 library books. And that same fat envelope from the cafe lying neatly on top like it mattered more than I did. In the car, she kept talking in that flat, tired voice adults use when they are trying to make something ugly sound responsible. This is for your own good. You need more structure. We all agreed this is best. We. That word would follow me for years. We pulled into my grandparents' driveway just before dinner. My grandmother came out first, wiping flour off her hands onto her apron. My grandfather stayed on the porch. His arms were folded. His jaw was tight. He looked from me to my mother and back again, like he was trying very hard not to say what he really thought. Inside, there were hugs and 2 bright smiles and questions no one waited for me to answer. Nah, are you hungry? Do you want to see the room? We got your blanket from the guest closet. Everything felt rushed and forced, like a play everyone had rehearsed except me. Then my mother carried the envelope into my grandfather's office. That was when I knew this was not just a family visit. They sent me upstairs with my suitcase. I put it on the bed and opened it slowly, pretending to unpack. Really, I was listening. The office door downstairs was not fully closed. Voices rose through the house in sharp pieces. "You can't just leave her here," my grandfather snapped. "She is a child, not a project." My mother answered in a lower voice, but not a softer one. "We agreed to let her stay with me after Daniel died. That was the arrangement. I held everything together. I've earned some control." Then came the sentence that broke something in me for good. "If she keeps acting like this, I'm done. You can take her. Sign whatever needs signing. I'm tired of being the bad guy." Sign whatever needs signing. Like my life was paperwork. Like being my mother had become a contract she regretted. I crept out of the guest room and crouched near the top of the stairs, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I leaned just enough to see into the office below. The envelope from the cafe lay open on the desk. Papers were spread out in neat piles. I saw my name on one of them. Lily Harper. I saw my father's name too, and numbers, large ones. Even at 10, I knew what a lot of zeros looked like. My grandfather jabbed a finger at the page. This trust was for Lily, for school, for her future. Well, not for kitchen work and private retreats. My mother crossed her arms. That house needed repairs. I had a child to raise. You think any of that was free? My grandmother's voice was quieter, but more dangerous because of it. Daniel never meant for the money to be used like this. You know that. Daniel, my father. In our house, he had always been a framed smile and a sad story. He died in a crash when I was little. My mother said he had been drinking, that the grief nearly destroyed her, that she did everything alone after he was gone. I backed away before anyone caught me. I shut the guest room door and stared at myself in the mirror above the dresser. I had my father's eyes. Everyone always said so. Same shape, same strange mix of brown and gold and bright light, same crooked front tooth, too. But I stood there and tried to understand what I had just heard. If the people who are supposed to love you talk about you like a deal they regret making, what are you supposed to feel? That night, I waited until the house was quiet. Then I slipped out of bed. There was one board in the hallway that creaked. I stepped around it. The office door was open a little. Most of the papers were gone, but one page had slipped under the edge of a folder. I pulled it free carefully. It was part of my father's will. I could not understand every word, but one sentence was clear enough, even for a 10-year-old. All remaining funds in the trust are to be used solely for the benefit of my daughter, Lily. Solely. Not mostly, not whenever convenient, not if my mother decided her life needed improving. I folded the page and hid it under my shirt. That night, I slept with it under my pillow. For the first time in my life, I understood there was a difference between being loved and being tolerated because money came with you. 2 days later, I stopped being a child with a clear address. It happened on a gray morning that smelled like burnt toast and cold coffee. My mother had already gone back to the city. My grandparents were trying very hard to act normal. My grandmother asked if I wanted cereal. My grandfather read the paper too loudly. No one mentioned the office. No one mentioned the trust. No one mentioned the fact that my mother had left me there like a box she did not want to carry anymore. I could not stay in that house, pretending I had not heard what I heard. So I ran. I left a note on the kitchen table. I'm sorry. That is what children write when adults make them feel like taking up space is a crime. I put the page from my father's will into my backpack. I added the only photo I had of him holding me as a baby and a silver keychain he had given me, which my grandmother had once found in a memory box and let me keep. Then I took $32 from the emergency jar above the fridge and walked out. The bus station was far enough away that my legs hurt before I got there. I kept expecting a car to pull up beside me, my mother's voice, my grandfather shouting my name, a police car. Nothing happened. I reached the station sweaty, scared, and still too young to know where I wanted to go. I sat on a cracked blue bench under a buzzing light and held my backpack against my chest like it was armor. People came and went around me. No one stopped. Then a police officer crouched in front of me. He was wearing a jacket too big for his shoulders and had tired eyes. Hey, he said gently, you lost. For one strange second, I almost answered with the word my mother had used, her. Instead, I said, my name is Lily. At the station, they gave me hot chocolate in a foam cup. It tasted thin and powdery and nothing like the one from the cafe. Adults asked questions in circles. Where is your mother? Why did you leave? Did somebody hurt you? I said, my dad is dead. My mother said they agreed to let me stay somewhere else. That shut the room up for a few seconds. Then a woman in a gray suit came in, followed by a man carrying a beat-up leather briefcase. The man looked like he had been running his hands through his hair all morning. He knelt in front of me and asked, Oh, Lily? I nodded. I'm Nathan, he said. I was your father's lawyer. The officer frowned. Her mother has already been contacted. Nathan's jaw tightened just a little. And I've already contacted the court, he replied. There are standing issues involving this child's guardianship and a trust in her name. Has anyone reviewed the file? Half an hour later, someone had. I did not understand all the notes they added to my case. Words like dispute, misuse, restricted access, financial concern, custodial conflict. What I understood was simpler. My father had tried to protect me with papers. My mother had spent years trying to bend those papers around herself. Nathan sat across from me in the little interview room and rested his elbows on his knees. You do not have to go back with her tonight, he said quietly, and every part of me went stiff. But she's my mom, I whispered. He nodded. And your father had parents, too. They have been trying to see you for years. I blinked. What? He watched my face carefully. Your mother told the court and several professionals that visits with them upset you. She said you refused. That's not true, I said so fast it almost came out as one word. His expression changed then. Not pity. Something steadier. Anger maybe, but controlled. Okay, he said. Then we start there. The months that followed were made of courtrooms, waiting rooms, and words adults used when deciding a child's life. My mother cried beautifully in public. She wore soft colors. She spoke in a shaking voice about grief and sacrifice and how hard it had been to raise a difficult child alone after losing her husband. She said I was sensitive, that I ran when rules got hard, that I was confused because of trauma. Judges listened, social workers nodded, people wrote notes, and all the while, paper told a different story. There were toxicology reports from the night my father died, proving he had not been drunk at all. There were witness statements that said my mother had been at a bar that night with another man while my father called her again and again. There were emails from my father begging for more time with me and asking why his parents were being pushed away. There were bank statements showing quiet transfers from my trust into personal accounts under my mother's name. No one asked the child at the center of all of it what it felt like to hear herself discussed like a burden. In the end, a judge signed a new order. One, I would go live with my father's parents in another state while the investigation continued. Officially, I was placed with relatives. Unofficially, I vanished from the life my mother had built. As we stood in the courthouse hallway, she bent down toward me. Her mascara had smudged. Her smile was gone. "You are ruining my life," she whispered. I wanted to tell her. We agreed to let her stay, remember? But I was still 10. So I said nothing. I just watched her walk away. Life with my father's parents felt so different at first that I did not trust it. Their house smelled like coffee, cinnamon, and old wood. My grandmother sang while she cooked. My grandfather talked to the radio during football games. They laughed loudly, they cried openly, they taped my drawings to the refrigerator like they mattered. No one ever said, "We agreed to let her stay." They said, "We're so glad you're here." I kept waiting for the hidden cost. There was none. There was therapy. There were long talks about my father that did not end in silence. There were photo albums taken out of closets. There were stories about what kind of laugh he had, how he used to burn toast, how he cried when I was born. Nathan visited often at first, then less. He brought legal updates, forms, and once a small stack of letters my father had written but never mailed. The file with my name on it kept growing. By the time I was 16, it was thick enough to thud when dropped on a table. On my 16th birthday, Nathan handed me a box folder and said, "These are copies. All of them. You have the right to know." That night, I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by papers. There was the police report from the crash. There were the blood test results. There were call logs from my father's phone. There were voicemails from my mother. I listened to one of them with shaking hands. "If you loved us, you'd be here." Another, "Maybe we don't need you." Another, "Stop making me the villain." The timestamp on the last voicemail was just before the crash. I sat still for a long time after that. All my life, I had been told a simple story. My father drank, he drove, he died. My mother survived and carried us both through grief. But the truth was uglier and more human than that. He had not been drunk. He had been frantic, angry, desperate, hurt. And my mother had built a life on a lie because the lie made her the strong one and him the cautionary tale. The financial records were no easier to read, and page after page of transfers from an account marked with my name into accounts marked with hers. Beside them, receipts, home upgrades, travel, wellness retreats, furniture, a membership at some private club. There was one sentence in a legal memo I read over and over. The primary custodian appears to be using the child's trust as emotional and financial leverage. Leverage. That was what I had been. Not just a daughter, a pressure point. At 17, I found my mother again online. Not in court records, not in gossip articles, on glossy websites, in well-lit photos, smiling on panels, speaking into microphones. The caption below one image read, "Dr. Julia Harper, child psychologist, author, parenting expert." My stomach turned. She had written a book. The title was something like Strong Boundaries, Strong Kids. There she was on morning shows, speaking softly about resilience, discipline, and the emotional courage it takes to raise children alone. In one interview, the host leaned in and asked if she had ever faced personal hardship. My mother smiled sadly. "My husband died when my daughter was very young," she said. "Then my daughter ran away for a while. But I learned that guilt is not the same thing as love. Sometimes real parenting means standing firm." I slammed my laptop shut so hard the screen flickered. At 10, anger had felt hot and helpless. At 17, it felt colder. More exact, more useful. It looked a lot like a plan. A year later, I got into art school. Some of it was scholarships. Some of it was finally the money from the trust my father had meant for me all along. I I studied visual art and digital media. I learned how to build images in layers, how to hide meaning beneath texture, how to make something beautiful carry something sharp. One elective changed everything. Digital design. We learned coding basics, embedded links, website structures, interactive art, and QR systems. I became obsessed with the idea that one image could hold a second life hidden just beneath the surface. One night, I was streaming a parenting panel my mother appeared on. She laughed when someone in the audience asked whether rebellious children ever hold real power in a family. "Kids think they do," she said, "but parents hold the real power." I paused the video. "No," I said to the dark screen, "not anymore." My revenge did not begin with shouting, it began with a sketch. Late one night in the studio, I opened a blank digital canvas and drew the chipped cafe mug from memory. I remembered everything about it: the crack near the rim, the faded blue logo, the way my small hands had held it while my life was being discussed 3 feet away. Around the mug, I painted broken lines that looked like legal writing twisted into wire. Behind it, I layered shadows: a little girl on a bus station bench, car headlights in rain, a courtroom chair, a hand sliding an envelope across a cafe table. I called the piece Agreement, then I hid something inside it. Working with Nathan, I created a private site. Plain layout, clean design, no dramatic colors, no tricks, just documents, dates, and facts. At the top of the site was one sentence, this time the whole story. We uploaded copies of my father's will, the toxicology report, year bank statements, court memos, and custody records. We also made a short video. No music, no emotional editing, just timestamps, highlighted lines, public statements from my mother beside the records that contradicted them, and a calm voiceover recorded by one of Nathan's colleagues. At the end of the video, there was a clip of me sitting at a table with the chipped mug in front of me. "My name is Lily," I said. "When I was 10, my mother told someone, we agreed to let her stay." What she never said was what that agreement really cost. That was the public part. There was also a second hidden folder protected by password. Only a few people would receive it: my uncle, my grandparents, the producers of one show my mother appeared on often, the licensing board connected to her work, the ethics office at the hospital where she volunteered. Inside that folder were the raw files, the untouched voicemails, the full financial transfer records, the custody notes, the last message she left my father before the crash. I listened to that voicemail only once. Then I asked Nathan to lock it away where I would need to choose, deliberately, if I ever wanted to hear it again. Once the digital work was done, the physical part came easily. Nathan helped me find the same model of mug online, vintage listing, slightly faded, same shape, same brand. My grandmother found the old photo of me at 10 in the cafe. She scanned it. I printed a copy of my father's will and highlighted the line that mattered. I wrote one sentence across the top in careful handwriting. This was the agreement you never kept. Then I printed my artwork on heavy paper and tucked a QR code into the bottom corner like a signature. The box was plain brown cardboard. No ribbon, no apology, no return explanation, just my mother's full name and address. On the top I wrote, "We agreed to let her stay." Do you remember what that cost? The final part of the plan was timing. The box would arrive first. The moment the QR code was scanned, the website would go live. At the same time, scheduled emails would begin going out with the public link to journalists, to her publisher, to the producers she worked with, to the licensing board, to the ethics office, and 1 hour after that, I would walk through her front door with the people she had spent years pushing to the edges of the story. My father's parents, Nathan, my uncle. Wyatt, I did not want to hear about the moment secondhand. I wanted to see her face when the story turned. "You understand, this will ruin her professionally," Nathan said the morning we finalized everything. "She ruined my childhood," I replied. He looked at me for a long second. "That does not always make revenge the same thing as justice." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm not inventing anything. I'm just taking away her version." He nodded once. "As long as you know there's no undoing it." I did know. I had spent 9 years living as a ghost in her narrative. I was not stepping back into it. We mailed the box on a Tuesday. By Thursday, the storm had started. We did not need hidden cameras to know. We had the website dashboard open. The link was being accessed from media companies, hospital offices, private addresses, or in agency domains. Emails were being opened, forwarded, screenshotted. By the time we drove into my mother's neighborhood, my phone was buzzing constantly. My grandparents sat in the front. My grandmother's hands were clasped so tight, her knuckles were white. My grandfather stared straight ahead, like if he looked at me too long, he might change his mind and ask me not to do it. I sat in the back with the second envelope in my lap. My heart was beating too fast. The driveway was full. My mother's car. My uncle's old car. A silver SUV I did not recognize. We could hear voices before we reached the porch. The front door was partly open. Inside, the living room looked exactly like the kind of room she would show in interviews. Soft colors, matching furniture, framed bookshelves, a table arranged to look effortless. Only now it was covered in printed papers. There was the mug on its side. Coffee had spilled across the table. Copies of my father's will lay open beside screenshots from the site. My mother stood in the middle of the room with her phone to her ear. "I don't know how they got those files," she was saying. "It's being twisted. It's a smear campaign. No, do not release a statement yet." Then she turned. She saw us. And for the first time in my life, I saw her face with nothing arranged on it. No sorrow, no polish, no practiced strength, just shock. My grandfather spoke first. "Hello, Julia." She lowered the phone slowly. "What are you doing here?" she asked, but then her eyes landed on me, and the question fell apart. "Hi, Mom," I said. My uncle, standing near the fireplace, muttered something under his breath, where my mother stared at me like she was seeing a ghost that had learned how to stand upright. "You're alive," she whispered. "I've been alive the whole time," I said. "You just preferred the version where I was gone." She flinched. Then, almost visibly, she pulled herself together and straightened her spine. "You can't just appear like this," she said. "The police looked for you. I thought someone had taken you." "Until it became useful not to finish the story," I said. My uncle looked down at the papers on the table. "They know about the trust," he muttered, "and the transfers." My mother's eyes flashed. Those records were sealed. Nathan stepped forward then. "We got them legally," he said. "You signed the releases years ago." She turned toward him with raw hatred. "You had no right." He did not raise his voice. "Your husband hired me to protect his daughter. The court agreed. You misused her trust, lied about the circumstances of his death, and built a professional reputation on a false narrative. The people tied to your work deserve the truth." My grandmother spoke next. Her voice shook, but she held steady. "You sent us an email once. Said Lily did not want to see us. Said it hurt her too much. Was that fake too?" My mother opened her mouth, closed it, looked at my uncle, looked at the papers. For the first time, it seemed to hit her fully that there was no good angle left, no safe version. "I was trying to survive," she said at last. "You were trying to keep control," my grandfather replied. "You used his death like a shield," my grandmother said. My mother turned to me, eyes wet now, angry and wild. "You have no idea what it was like," she said. "I was grieving. I was alone. I did what I had to." "No," I said. "You did what you wanted." Her voice rose. "I fed you. I clothed you. I paid for therapy." "With my trust," I said. Silence. That sentence hit harder than anything else I had said so far. Because it was plain. Because it was true. My uncle finally lifted his head. "I should have told years ago," he said quietly. "I heard you that night, in the office. You said if signing her away made your life easier, you'd do it." My mother looked at him like he had betrayed blood. "You promised me." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You promised a lot of people a lot of things." On the table, my artwork lay face up. She picked it up with shaking fingers. "What is this supposed to be?" "The agreement," I said. "The one I never signed." Her eyes fell to the QR code in the corner. She laughed once, sharp and ugly. "Always dramatic, just like your father." "This is not drama," I said. "This is documentation." That silenced her more than anger would have. She looked around the room, at the grandparents she had kept away, at the lawyer she had underestimated, at the brother who had stopped covering for her, at me. And finally she asked the only real question left. "So, what happens now?" Nathan answered first. "Legally, there will be consequences. Repayment, review of licensing, public correction of the false claim about your husband's death. The board will decide the rest." She looked at me. "And personally?" Personally, that word carried years inside it. Years. Personally was the little girl in the cafe trying not to move so adults would forget she was listening. Personally was the child at the bus station writing, I'm sorry because she already believed she was the inconvenience. Personally was the teenager watching a smiling woman on television talk about tough love while using her daughter's pain as career material. Personally was standing in that living room and seeing, for the first time, that truth could be louder than image. Personally, I said, I'm not here to fix you. I'm here so you can't pretend I never existed. Her shoulders dropped then, not dramatically, just enough, like something inside her had finally lost the strength to hold itself upright. I took the second envelope from under my arm and set it on the coffee table. This is a statement, I said. You can sign it. One, it corrects what you said about my father and acknowledges what you did with the trust. Sign it or don't. I'm done either way. Her fingers hovered over the envelope. And if I sign it? I looked at her. Then maybe one day we talk again, I said. Not as your lesson, not as your damage, not as your story, just as two people telling the truth. I did not wait for an answer. There was nothing else to say. As we walked out of the house, I noticed curtains moving in the neighbors' windows. Phones buzzed. Somewhere, someone was clicking the link for the first time. Somewhere else, someone was replaying the video. I expected revenge to feel louder. It did not. It felt like stepping into clear air after years of breathing smoke. The fallout was not dramatic in the way movies teach you to expect. It did not explode all at once. Just it cracked. Slowly, publicly, quietly. Her morning show appearances vanished from the channel's website. Her publisher announced a delay on her next book. The hospital released a short statement saying she had stepped away from advisory work to focus on personal matters. People wrote careful emails about values, transparency, and concern. No one said my name in those statements. That still hurt in a strange way. Even when truth wins, it does not always say your name aloud. The trust investigation took months to finish because paper moves slowly even when the truth is obvious. Then one afternoon, Nathan called. They're restoring everything, he said, with interest. I sat very still. And she signed the correction. He handed me a copy. My mother's signature sat at the bottom of a statement admitting to misuse of funds, with false public claims regarding my father's death, and misrepresentation of my relationship with my paternal family. There was no apology in the legal wording. There never is, but signing it still meant something. A week later, a letter arrived for me at my grandparents' house. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. Dear Lily, I do not expect forgiveness. Not now, maybe not ever. I convinced myself for years that I did what I had to do. I told myself survival explained everything. Looking at the documents now, looking at what I turned into, I cannot deny that I hurt you. I am sorry. She wrote about fear, grief, shame, how easy it had been to believe her own story once enough people praised her for surviving. She admitted that she had used my life as material, and that she had hidden inside public admiration because it was easier than facing private truth. At the end she wrote, If you ever want to speak to me, I will be here. If you never do, I will live with that. For once, the choice is yours. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a box with the page from my father's will, the cafe photo, and the silver keychain. Then I left it there. At school, I started a new series, large paintings based on legal documents, leases, custody forms, contracts, trust paperwork. In every piece, there was a child's outline hidden somewhere in the composition, sometimes obvious, sometimes almost impossible to find. I called the series Fine Print. At my first small gallery show, a woman stood in front of one canvas for a long time. It was based on my father's will, but if you did not know that, it just looked like a field of layered text with a figure trying to emerge from underneath it. It feels like someone is trapped inside a document, she said. Like their whole life was written in someone else's handwriting. I smiled. That's close, I said. Later that night, I sat on the porch with my grandfather while moths bumped softly against the porch light. After a long silence, he asked, Do you feel better? The honest answer was not simple. Sometimes, I said. Sometimes I remember her face when she realized other people knew, and I can breathe easier. And sometimes I wonder if I went too far. He waited. Sometimes I wonder if I could have just taken the money back quietly, if ruining her life makes me as ruthless as she was. He looked out into the yard for a while before answering. The difference, he said, is that you told the truth. She built her life on hiding it. That did not erase everything in me, but it loosened something. I still dream about the cafe sometimes. In the dream, I am 10 again. Feet swinging above the floor, hot chocolate cooling in front of me. My mother says into her phone, We agreed to let her stay. and I feel that same drop in my stomach. But now in the dream, someone sits across from me. It's me at 19, the version who sent the box. She leans forward and says, "They agreed to let you stay on their terms. One day, you'll choose your own." The little girl version of me frowns and asks, "Does it still hurt?" "Yes," I tell her, "but staying in their agreement hurts more." Then I wake up, and I am not in a cafe. I am not in a guest room waiting to be kept or returned. I hear the house settle around me, the old wood creak, my grandmother moving in the kitchen, my grandfather coughing downstairs. Normal sounds, safe sounds. For the first time in my life, the word we no longer feels like a threat. It feels like belonging. My mother still exists somewhere outside my daily life. She works quietly now, not famous anymore, not invited onto stages. Some people know what happened. Some judge her. Some probably feel sorry for her. That is not my job to manage. I do not know if I will ever visit her again. I do not know if I will ever say mom without flinching inside. What I do know is this. I refuse to keep living in the version of the story where I was the burden, the difficult child, the girl adults agreed to tolerate until she became inconvenient. If you have ever been that child, the one sitting close enough to hear the real conversation but never important enough to be included in it, then you already understand why I mailed that package. In the end, my revenge was not only about making my mother panic, it was about walking away from the table where my life had been bargained over, and finally sitting somewhere I chose, somewhere we met people who wanted me there, not people who had simply agreed.